record this. All right. So, business stats, right? The crowd goes wild. I know. Oh, yeah. I forgot to do it again. I usually do like a welcome to calculus. And everyone's like, fun for me, not so fun for you. Anyways, no, business stats, stat 124. I'm Emily. Spelled funny, it's just Emily. Lee, which my parents aren't that cruel. There's so many E's in there. I used to be Gustafson, so if you see Emily Gustafson anywhere, that's me. Double identities. So, stat 124. Business stats. Oops. I didn't write all terms, so yesterday when I was here, it was a real mess. It's still a mess, but it's not going to get much better. So, sorry. So I'm Emily. Lee. Does anyone know Paul Lee? He teaches in the math department. Not my husband. A really good friend of mine, though. It's just really weird that there's two Lees in the department, but anyways. So I like to kind of put that out. But, yeah, so no, we're just really good friends. Of course, let's get my email out of the way so y'all have it. elee@okanagan.bc.ca. Just the usual. I'll give you guys my cell phone too, because often it's easier to just text me questions. I was hoping to move to something maybe a little bit better for messaging. But when I asked my class this morning if anyone uses WhatsApp or Line or whatever, it was crickets. So I guess no one uses any of them. We all just use Messenger, which of course I can't use because it just doesn't feel professional. Like, oh yeah, it's my teacher on Messenger. I don't know. It would be the easiest though. Can we all agree on that? Yeah, I know. So that's my cell. Okay. So feel free, just for now until, I don't know, probably won't even get to it this term, but so just feel free to text me if you have any questions, because I find that it's easier if you just take a picture of what you're working on, what you've tried, whatever, and then just send it my way. I can look at it, go from there. Right? So it just kind of speeds it up a little bit. What else can I give you of all my information? My office is C104. It's a shared office, so and it's kind of a weird setup. They've plastered all the windows in the office, so you can't actually see who's in there or if anyone's in there. And the light is always on to make it even more complicated. So if I'm there, just knock, see if I'm there. I'm usually around, but yeah, if I'm not, then we can just set up time to meet. So I will have office hours. I'm still solidifying some things with some other labs, so once I have that sorted out, I'll give you guys my office hours. But really, if I'm here on campus, then you can ask me questions. You can just come by whenever. Okay. First day, there's so much that I want to just give you. All my information. Okay. C104, huh? How about another burning question is, what about the textbook? There is a textbook, but it's free, and I'll post it on Moodle. Okay. So we will use a free textbook called Open Intro. I will post on Moodle. I completely forgot to do it before class, even though I had loads of time. So it goes. When you have too much time, you don't do anything. It's when you don't have enough time, that's when you get a lot done. So I'll post that on Moodle. Or you can search Open Intro and download it from there. It's just going to be a PDF, so whichever way. Okay. A note about the textbook, though, is that I'm not going to be using it so closely. I'll use it for the section headers, basically, and then I'll have my own notes around that, right? So what I'll do, so the setup for how I teach my courses is I'll write all my notes in here, and then all these notes get posted on Moodle. So you'll have those even if you can't come to class, or you probably noticed that we're in a Zoom room. Fun to say, fun to do, okay? Which is just an online meeting room like Skype or GoToMeeting or whatever. And so all the lectures will be on Zoom as well. So if you can't come to class, then during the class time, you could just kind of jump in here. I'm not coordinated enough to answer questions on Zoom as well as in here. So if you are on Zoom, then you'll just be able to kind of listen and watch the board. Okay. So so on Zoom, you'll just see whatever is being displayed on here, right? Because I'm sharing my screen, and hear my voice, this lovely voice. Ugh. Okay. And then later, so and then I record these and I post them on YouTube, so they'll always be available. Okay. So even if you miss class, sucks for you guys because there's no excuses. I post my lectures, so even if you miss a class, I do expect you to stay on top of all the material, no matter how you do that, right? Doesn't matter to me, right? Which kind of brings me to my next point. Attendance. I know I'm supposed to be kind of, you have to come to class, you have to come to class. I don't care if you come to class. I care that you learn, right? So as long as you're learning, however you're doing that, that's fine by me, okay? But the reason that people are obsessed with people coming to class is because that is the best way to learn these things, okay? And so, but I mean, life happens, other tests happen, other classes happen, all these things, you know, happen in life and you can't do anything about it. And I understand that. So I hate to say I don't care if you come to class. I like to see you guys. But it doesn't matter to me if you come to class or if you're keeping up with the material on your own. Okay? So, yeah, so I post these notes on Moodle. I post the videos on YouTube, which I'll post a link to, and the Zoom room. But that's just during the lecture time. Okay? It's always open, but unless I'm teaching it, it's going to be empty. Any questions so far? Stats, we'll need a calculator, right? Okay. So I think for business, they prefer that you use these. I think these are the approved ones for business. But I'm going to go ahead and say this one. So I'll be working on this one just because it is the approved one for business. But if you have a non-programmable one that you like better, that's fine. I won't tell on you. Okay. So, but if you've done business math, then you probably have this one already. So sometimes it's easier to work on the same one that I have, but I wouldn't go out and buy this one if you don't have it just for this course, because it's kind of expensive and not that good. So anyways, unless it's for business. So for calculators, what's this one called? TIBA2 plus or non-programmable calculator. Big emphasis on or. If you don't have this little guy, it's fine. But if you are taking business math, have you all taken business math? Yeah, that's what rumor had it. They had to take. I didn't know you had to take business math before this one. Yes, you do. Do you? No? Yeah, weird. Okay. That's what I thought. Okay. But I just heard like an hour ago, they're like, oh no, they have to take business math before this. I was like, what? Kind of weird. Yeah. Oh, let's do that. Who's in business in here? I guess I should have asked who's not in business in here. One? And what are you in? Sorry to put you on the spot. Nice. Yeah, you'll survive. That's great. So we're all business except for one comp sci guy. Fun. Okay. He's the guy to talk to for the labs then, I guess. So, oh yeah, let's do my other little survey, quick survey. Who uses WhatsApp as a messaging, like uses it, has it on their phone? Oh, some hands, yeah, it's pretty good. What about Line? Anyone use Line? Line? Okay. Those are the only ones I know. I'm stumped. No one uses any of them. All right. The only reason that I'm kind of wanting to move to that instead of just texting everyone individually is because it would be really nice to just have kind of a group discussion going. And I know there's lots of venues for that, but I find Moodle really clunky. I don't particularly like Moodle for those things. And obviously Messenger wouldn't look that good. So anyways, I'd like to move everyone to one messaging service, but anyways, it's not really that important. For now, you have my cell phone until I figure something out. Okay. You won't really have questions till later anyways. Okay. So, what else? That's for my other guys. How about your grades? Your grade breakdown. Oh, I should tell, so you will get course outlines and all that fun stuff. I probably won't print the course outlines. I do a term schedule for all my courses where I have a day-by-day breakdown of everything that we're doing and all the due dates and all that fun stuff. So I'll have those, but the reason that I don't have them today is because we offer this course across campuses, right? It's at 121, 124. And so we want to all be on the same page, but we also have to match accreditation, all that fun stuff. So we're just kind of firming that up, and then I'll have something for you guys on Wednesday. So not to worry, you'll get tons of paper on Wednesday. How about? But it's good to know the grade breakdown. So for the grades, you're gonna do assignments. Assignments are only gonna be 10%. And there's gonna be 7 assignments. And then what I'm gonna do officially starting this term, but there's some of you who know about it already. So the practice test that I'll post before each test, there's 2 tests, okay? I'll give you time I'll give you the practice test, you'll do it on your own. And then for the review day, what you'll do is you'll show me the work that you did on the practice test. It doesn't have to be right, just that you tried it. You've attempted all these questions, right? And then that'll be worth an assignment as well, but just a completion mark. So it's an easy 100% assignment to kind of lock away. Okay. So seven written assignments plus those 2 practice tests. I won't do it for the final, but so 9 assignments overall, making each assignment 1.111 repeating percent. Easy to deal with, right? I'll make a note here. 7 assignments and 2 practice tests. Each worth 1.11%. Ish. Okay. So in the review class, what we'll do is we'll go through the practice test together. Right? So the day before the test, we do a review, and then we'll work through the practice test. I'll give you little pointers, right? How could this change? Right? How could that change? That kind of thing. And it should prepare you for the test. Okay? So, and I'll give you the due dates for all those on the term schedule as well. Okay? They are sort of subject to change in case I fall behind usually, then I'll have to bump it up, but they'll never be earlier than those due dates. Okay. The labs are also 10%. You do not, I repeat, you do not have to pass the lab to pass the course, but it should be a pretty easy 10%. Not easy, but kind of, if you put in the work, you should have that 10%. So, who's in my lab section? I only have 2 Stat 121 or 124 labs. Nice. Oh, good chunk of you. Fun. It doesn't matter. We're all teaching the same stuff, but yeah, very good. So labs are 10%. Again, you don't have to pass the lab to pass the course, but it is a good 10% of your grade. So keep that in mind. I'll just say tests, there's 2 of them, and they're gonna total 40%. Okay. The reason I'm keeping it kind of vague is in case the whole class does really poorly on test 1, but then does really well on test 2, then I wanna kind of reserve the right to shift things to test 2, right? It's gonna be on a whole class basis, right? So, you can assume a 20-20 split, right? Unless for some reason I failed you and test 1 doesn't go so well or test 2 doesn't go so well, right? Then I've kind of hedged my bets there. Okay? And then the final exam is 40 as well. I'll say this now, it'll be in the fine print of the course outline, which you'll probably never read. You do have to get at least 40% on the final to pass the course, assuming that that gets you a pass overall. Okay? 40% on the final should be pretty doable. Okay? So, any questions so far? There will be, yeah. And I'll give you a copy to have to work from, and it'll be the exact same for the tests and for the final. And so nothing's kind of changing. But again, just solidifying the concepts, and then I'll give it to you. Because it gets confusing if I have to yoink the formula sheets that I gave you and swap it out for a new one. Oh, never mind, we're doing this now. No, it wouldn't be that bad. Oh, I feel like I'm forgetting something, but any questions? We'll just talk briefly about the, oh yeah, great.
Finalizing. It does not matter which lab we're in, right?
It does not matter.
Yeah, so
No. Oh, no. As long as you're in a Stat 124 lab, you're gravy, okay? I only have 2 of them, so it'd be really hard to get into one of mine. And they're kind of late. They're like 4 o'clock on Mondays and Wednesdays or something. But yeah, so no, it doesn't matter. We're using all the same material, so it doesn't matter. Mine will be way more fun, but no. How I would prefer that you use the lab sections actually is more for asking questions, right? Like, hey, I've worked on this and it's not working, and I've tried this, and can you see what's going on here, right? That kind of deal. So new this term, so I've developed labs using R. Okay. Has anyone heard of R before? Just one? No? Twirly pen? Caught me off guard. Yeah. Twirly pen, yeah, that's fun. It's like 2 people, great. So R is a statistical programming language. And that's why I said, flock to this guy. No, you flocked me. Leave him alone. No. So I'm not expecting any sort of programming knowledge, right? We're starting from bare bones. In fact, I'm not expecting you to know what's going on at all for the first half of the term, right? I do, however, expect you to stick with it, keep working at it, keep trying, right? My pet peeve is when someone, it's not working. Okay, well, what have you tried? I don't know. I don't know this stuff. No, of course you don't know this stuff. That's why we're doing it, right? And so, so there is quite a steep learning curve. I want you to be aware of that. But also, any sort of progress that you make is really good, right? And so you just got to stick with it, right? And kind of keep working at it. Even if it doesn't make sense, you just got to kind of work through it. And eventually you'll be able to look back and say, hey, that was pretty hard. That was it. But I did it. So we will be using R, which is a statistical programming language. It is, on the plus side, it is kind of industry standard by now, right? It is relatively new. There are probably some places that are still using SPSS and hopefully not Excel, but hoping, but probably using Excel as well. But in terms of, you know, kind of proper analyses, most people are using R by now. Okay, so it's a statistical programming language. Oops. Okay. So one nice thing is that it's free. So you can download it, it's open source. Open source also means that there are people constantly developing things for R, right? It's kind of constantly improving. And so I guarantee you, if you have a question, you can just Google it, right? It might be hard to kind of wade through the answers. People get pretty snarky on those forums, but the answer will be there. Okay, so R is free. You can download it on your own laptop. You don't have to use the school computers. It will be installed on the school computers, of course. But if you prefer to use your own laptop, kind of do it whenever you want, then that works, right? Yeah. It works great on Macs. In fact, I think it works better on Macs. No, it's all the same, but for me, we will be using R through RStudio. Okay, so RStudio just makes it easier to deal with. Okay, so through RStudio, and it wasn't until last term that someone was like, oh, like our studio. What? Mind blown. But yeah, I guess maybe that's what they're going for. I don't know. But so what you'll have to do if you're working on your own laptop, and I'll post instructions, is you'll first download R and then download RStudio, and then you'll be able to, well, then you'll be on the same page as the school of computers. Okay. But again, that's a lab stuff. Okay, Any questions, comments, concerns? Yes.
Was there supposed to be a lab in the first week?
No, thank you. I knew I was forgetting something. No labs this week, and also, so no labs in the first week and no labs in the last week of school. Okay, thank you. You know what? I'm gonna caps lock this. No labs this week. Oops, WEC. What's a caps lock sentence without an exclamation mark? I don't know. Okay, so no labs this week. We haven't covered anything. It'd be really tough to get a lab out of you guys. So no labs this week, and also no labs in the last week of school. Right. But we'll deal with that when it comes our way. Okay. Thank you for that. Oh, I do want to say, if you do miss a class, as it happens, the bare minimum that I'm expecting you to do is read these notes that I'll post. You don't have to watch the 1.5 hour long video necessarily, because I do, well, here, the important notes aren't here, but usually I'll put kind of important notes, like assignment 4 is now due on this day. That kind of important information, I'll put at the top, or try to put at the top, okay? And so I do expect you to read through those notes at the very least if you do miss a class. And I'm assuming you read through them if you're in class. But what an assumption to make. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So the final will cover kind of more or less everything that we've done. With an emphasis, I will say with an emphasis on the later stuff. Okay. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So, with all this kind of course material talk that I've had going on with my colleagues, now I'm really worried that I'm not going to have enough time to cover anything. So we are going to start today. Usually I kind of have an easy day on the first day, but I'm afraid not. And it hurts me more than it hurts you. Okay, so what is statistics? So don't worry, I'm not expecting you to answer. In fact, I'm not the type to call on people to answer questions. That used to be kind of the worst when I was in school. I always sat up front, but I never wanted to answer any questions. So all of a sudden, if there was a question, I was busy, finishing my notes or something, and down. It's like, oh yeah, I know the answer, but I'm just finishing my notes here, so can't answer. Sorry. No one wants to answer questions. But I do a lot of like fake questions. So I'll ask a question and then I'll answer it. How's that sound? So statistics, I think when we say stats, depending on kind of where you're at in your schooling, maybe you have a better idea of what it is. But most people, if you say, oh, I did, for example, so I did my master's in stats, and everyone would just say, oh, so you must know a lot about baseball. What? Why would I know a lot about baseball? Because that's what most people think about, okay? That's not, unfortunately, not what we'll be talking about, right? Well, fortunately for me, because I know nothing about most sports, okay? But statistics in general, in the broad sense, is whenever we want to know something about a population, okay? So we want to know, let's say, the average heights of males at the college, right? So that's something that we want to know. That's a research question that we have. And so kind of a bad example, because I guess technically we could measure all the heights of males at the college. It's not that big, right? But I think globally, right, the heights of males, whatever. Right, so we want to know something about a population, right? It's often way too expensive and kind of cumbersome to record information about the whole population, right? And so statistics is when we take a sample of that population, okay, and we do calculations on this sample, right? We figure out the average height of the sample, right? The average weight, their hair colors, etc. Right? So we do all these calculations on the sample to try to know something about the whole population, right? Because if we've collected a sample that's representative of the population, then statistics will help us say, okay, well, I'm pretty confident that the mean height, or sorry guys, I haven't introduced that term yet, but the average height, right, is this plus or minus maybe some wiggle room. And so that's the whole idea. We have this population that we want to know something about, and so we take just a subset, right, a sample of that group, do calculations on that group, that manageable group, and this manageable size could be easily 20,000, right? Not really manageable by hand, right, but manageable. And then we can say something about the whole population, right? We know that the average height of the males in our sample isn't exactly the same as the average height in our population, right? But statistics will let us say it's this plus or minus this little bit of wiggle room, right? That's where we're pretty sure the population mean height is. Average height. Oof. Don't worry, I'll introduce it today. In case you haven't figured it out, mean is the average, average is the mean. I use them interchangeably as if I don't even care. But I always have to remember on the first day, I kind of just slip it out. So what is statistics? When we use data from a sample, to learn something. Oops. About a population. I love standing and teaching. Lets me eyeball all y'all, but it's really hard to write. So I'll probably move to sitting down, but it's more boring. So on the first day, I like to survey the scene. Yeah. So the whole goal is to learn something about the population. We can't do a calculation on the population, but we can do a calculation on the sample. Right? So that's the whole idea in the broadest sense. Okay. So I'll draw this little very obvious graphic that my supervisor used to, when I took this, well, a similar course. And then later he he was my supervisor, but he was my teacher then, and he was always drawing this. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Population, sample, yeah, I get it. But it wasn't until halfway through the course I was like, oh, population sample, got it. So we take information from the sample to try to learn something about the whole population. Okay. So, any questions So following the kind of the sections of the textbook, like I said, I will not really follow the textbook. As far as what I'm expecting you to know, it'll all be in these notes, right, that I'll post. I really just kind of follow the textbook for talking points, right? So I use section 1.2, 1.3, etc. But I don't really remember what's in there. Just like, oh yeah, I know what to say. Let me add them. So here's a pickle. Pickle for a pickle. If we have a sample and a population, and we're talking about the average height, for example, right? We're interested in the average height of a population, right? But to figure that out, or to get some estimate of it, we would have the average height of the sample. So now we have two average heights, right? And so it's going to be really important for us to be able to distinguish between something from a population and something from a sample, because there will be a sample mean and a population mean, right? The sample mean, average, sorry guys, I'll get there soon, right? The sample average, we use it to try to approximate the population average, right? But both of them are averages, right? So we need terminology to say, oh, that's from the population, or oh, that's from the sample, right? And what you'll find a lot of this first chapter is just kind of getting us through all this terminology so that we know kind of the machinery that we're working with, right? Because there's a lot of terminology associated with data, right? Being able to speak fluently about data, right? And so we'll just kind of plow through, and it'll be kind of, I hate to say boring, but it'll be kind of boring. Just kind of developing these terms, okay? So we need to be able to distinguish. We need to be able to distinguish between information from a population which is just, oops, what happened there? Everybody / everything of interest and information from a sample. I'll kind of throw in the sample definition. Okay. A sample is a carefully selected subset of the population. Everyone's okay with the word subset, I think, right? Because I don't know how else to, just a subset of a bigger group, right? A subset of the population. Oh, looking at my less than ideal handwriting. If you are watching the YouTube videos, I guess they do put subtitles on there. So that's pretty fun. And I've heard they're pretty good. Someone just showed me the other, last term at the end. She's like, oh yeah, I just put the subtitles on. Oh, cool. So I do like to read out the words as I'm writing them too, so. Right, so we need terminology for these things. And so here we go. We'll start with the population. population, anything that describes the population is a parameter. Okay. So a parameter is a calculation or number derived from the entire population. How about a sample? Ready for this? It's a statistic. So any value that comes from a sample is called a statistic. Okay. Just to keep them straight, notice the population parameter, sample statistic. Makes it easier for me, at least. Okay. And it's basically the same thing. It's a calculation or number derived from the sample. So just going back to the core idea of statistics in general, right, is that we use sample information to say something about the population, right? Really what we're doing is we're using a statistic to learn about the corresponding parameter, right? And so really, so we use a statistic to learn about its corresponding parameter. Look at us go, applying our terminology right away. So probably the most common thing that we talk about is the average, right? And so I'll just say here, now I'll say it. The mean is the average. And I use them interchangeably, I already have. Right? And so the mean is the average is the mean, used interchangeably. So some other things that we might care about, right? Some other statistics that we might collect. So we have the mean, right? That's a fun one. Common one. Right? Just to do a couple, we could talk about the standard deviation, right? Even if you aren't sure what it is, you've probably heard the words before, standard deviation, right? So the standard deviation is another thing we could find. And we'll talk more about it later, but for now we're just introducing kind of terminology. And another thing that we could talk about might be the variance. If we are talking about something from the sample, right, then we have a statistic. I'll make that a note up there. right? Or we could also have, so we could have a mean from the sample, or we could have a mean from the population, right? Because remember, the whole goal of calculating the sample mean is to know something about the population mean, right? And so there's also a population mean. And this is a parameter. Okay. So we need some sort of notation, right? You can see the need, right, to be able to differentiate between a sample mean and a population mean. Sample standard deviation, population standard deviation, right, etc. And so for the mean, the sample mean, we use x bar. So x with a bar over it, that's your sample mean. Other textbooks might use y bar, and in general, anything with a bar over it is a sample mean. Okay. So I'll just, anything with a bar over it don't worry, I'll fill this table in a bit here, but I just want to make a note. So anything with a bar over it is a sample mean or average. Right. So x bar is just the average of x. You can even do something like if you just have height bar, that's the average height, right? So you could even put names to this x, right? That's okay. So average height. Your average smiley. Anything with a bar over it is just the sample average. Okay. So what's the population mean going to look like? The population mean is going to be denoted by mu, the Greek letter mu. Okay. So mu has a nice little, it's basically a fancy M with a tail on the upswing, I guess. That didn't make sense. If you prefer to just write MU, that's fine too. Okay. But it's just a fancy M. Okay. In general, all parameters are going to be denoted by Greek letters. Okay. So I'll make a note of that as well, because that's kind of the easiest way to look at things and say, oh, well, that's a Greek letter, so it must be from the population. Okay. Whereas I'm calling X bar kind of a normal letter. It's not really, right? But it's not a Greek letter. Okay. The standard deviation we denote by a lowercase s, which without context is really hard to kind of tell, but I'll just write a note here, lowercase. And for the Greek letter or the population, we're going to use a lowercase sigma. Okay, so a lowercase sigma is just an O with a tail on top. Okay. So I guess the Greek letters just have more flair. The variance, we won't talk about the variance because I prefer to use the standard deviation. The relationship is really simple. The variance is just the square of the standard deviation. And so you can kind of, depending on what discipline you're in, right, you might use the variance or you might use the standard deviation. Just know that everything that we've developed with just the standard deviation can of course be developed with the variance as well, right? Because the variance is just the standard deviation squared. Standard deviation is just the variance square rooted, right? So you can work between the two. I had to pick a lane though, and I like just the standard deviation, not have to deal with the squares. But don't be alarmed if you read material somewhere else and they're using the variance. That's fine. And then of course the parameter, just sigma squared. This room is so bright, can't be stopped. Not ideal for the board, but whatever. Okay. So that's just an idea of the notation that we use as we introduce more statistics and parameters, right? I'll tell you what they are, but for now, in the beginning of term, then we just need to know about these few. You're gonna get a handle on those. Okay. I will make a note, right, that all these parameters are denoted by Greek letters. Okay. So parameters are denoted by Greek letters. I'm torn because that's as far as I got this morning. And I don't want to zoom ahead because just spoiler alert, Stat 121 and 124, we cover the same material, don't worry. Not like you're getting gypped or anything. So I don't really want to zoom ahead. Are there any questions? Nope. Everyone's ready to get out of here. Yeah, fine by me. I'll see you guys on Wednesday.